so, but back to the breath, I think that a lot of people, and when I teach in New York, it's a little, I don't know if I want to, label it, but I will, a little sad or frustrating because the most popular form of physical yoga now is called vinyasa. Vinyasa means to flow on the breath. So really what we're trying to do in yoga is to get our breath to be non-restless. And anybody that's anxious or stressed is not got a non-restless breath. So to answer your question, Zane.
Hi, and welcome to The Holistic Entrepreneur, where we explore innovative approaches to healthcare through conversations with pioneering practitioners. I'm your host, Zane Myers. Let's dive into today's episode.
Here we are. Welcome this week and again to another episode of The Holistic Entrepreneur. And I am here with Donna Sewell Davidge. And she runs the Sewell House, and she's got kind of an interesting background, and she's an unusual guest for us. I really wanted to talk to her because I think she's got a great story, and it sounds like what she does is a lot of fun. And to me, I went on your site and I looked at it and I thought, that looks like so much fun.
Well, fun is important. It's funny, Zane, I pulled out Yogi Tea and it has a little expression, and usually, you don't get the same one twice, but I decided, I'll double it up. And twice I got laughter is the same in all languages. So isn't that what fun is about? That we try to have some fun in life.
Yeah. And laugh, hopefully.
That was my message before I went on with you. I'm like, what? 2 in a row? And I'm using 2 tea bags, which I don't normally do. But anyway, yeah.
Are they the caffeinated kind?
No, this is called detox tea. And it's one of those yogi teas. It's like dandelion root tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's it taste like?
It tastes like pretty good because they put certain things in it to make it tasty. It's not too strong. And some of them taste very... very not so tasty, but this is tolerable. And I do caffeine, but that's my morning drink, right? So here in New York, it's not caffeine time, right? Yeah.
So let's talk about what the Sewell House is all about. I think that's a good place to start.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me about the Sewell House, what you do now, and we're going to go back to and talk about how you got started and the rest of that too.
Okay, great. So what we do now is we're still a seasonal retreat because I'm answering you from New York, talking with you from New York City. However, I'm leaving here 2 weeks from today, and we are right now a seasonal wellness and yoga retreat. I would say we're really more a yoga retreat, but because wellness has become such a big deal, we do a lot of the things that are under the umbrella of wellness, right? So Sewell House is a small boutique retreat. And I think it was started on a premise that is very different than many retreats. Started in 1997, though the house was built in 1865, and it is my ancestral home, which a lot of people think I inherited. There's a big difference between making a conscious decision to purchase something and inheriting it. And it was a conscious decision to purchase it really with no background in business, really. I just, because since this is an entrepreneurial thing, I just decided to do it for 3 reasons. One is the person who told me to buy it actually said, you love Northern Maine. True. I love my family history. True. And I love yoga. And that was way before yoga was like what it is now in our culture. So I bought it in 97. And I've been doing yoga now 50 years and teaching it 40 years. And so at the Sewell House, we have a nice staff of people that have been doing yoga, for longer than most people, I'd say. And then we're also in a really beautiful, a lot of retreats these days are in natural environments, but we're also in a part of the United States that is not touristy, that is not populated, that is very pristine, very forested, lakes and rivers. And I just got a Reader's Digest that has a cover article on how nature heals. We see this all the time. So I think the lifestyle aspect, I live a certain lifestyle that we share with people. So yeah, Sewell House is its unique thing. It's very unique. Yeah, only 6 guest bedrooms. So very small and only private bedrooms. None of the, like some of these bigger retreats, you have a roommate, you don't know them and all that kind of, oh, sorry, that's New York. If you can hear the horns, even though the
So
window's
I
closed.
thought that in New York, not to digress, but didn't they pass a law that there's some huge fines if you honk your horn? It doesn't matter. It's
No, it's like for years we weren't allowed to jaywalk, and now this past fall they made it like, you can jaywalk. So, and I live on a one-lane street. I live in a cute little neighborhood in what's called Nolita in New York City, and someone is probably parked on a one-way, street, and they can't get by or something.
all right. Okay.
So, yeah, New York is noisy. I'm really ready to get up to the quietude of Northern Maine. I can say right now, I am very, very ready for that. It's a time of year where everyone comes out and there's a lot more sirens and just a lot more going on this time of year.
So typically, when somebody comes to Sewell House, what's on the agenda? What happens?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, again, we're very small and personalized. We always have been. I think the word intimate is what a lot of people say about it. So often people say they come into the house, they feel the embrace of the house, they feel comfortable right away. It does not have a feeling of something commercial or commodified. And so our daily schedule is something we get up in the morning and we know we're going to meditate at 7:30. That's on the schedule. We know we're going to do yoga at 8 o'clock. We know there's coffee and tea out and caffeinated coffee before that. And we know we're going to have breakfast after yoga. But the rest of the day is pretty much up to people. Do I want to go kayaking? I'm so sorry. It's usually not that bad, the horns. Do I want to go kayaking? Do I want to go hiking? We have some amazing hikes. Do I just want to go walking? Do I want to grab one of your bikes? And so do I want to book a massage or a Reiki session? That kind of thing. So we have the healing modalities for sure. So we kind of look at what the weather's like and what people's energy levels like. And then some people want to just have the day to themselves. They're in their room journaling, or they're sitting on the porch, or they're wandering around our very tiny little town that we're in. But oftentimes they want to get out, and either they do it with other guests or we do it as a group outing. And that also is a really nice way for people to connect and have, that community that we feel we've done. I really do feel like we've made a community because recently I brought a piece I wrote over 30 years ago to New York City, and a lot of people that attended this one woman show that I performed were people who had been to Sewell House over the years, and also some who'd studied with me in New York, but a lot of them had been to Sewell House too. So I think we're like a little community where every day you get up and you find something that you can do to further your personal growth.
So 30 years. How full is Sewell House? So, do you have to book way in advance, or do you?
Actually, in all transparency, no. And it's interesting because over the years, I don't exactly know what it is that you do, but I looked a little bit, and you were talking about, how many people are on social. I think that you don't have to necessarily get your business going on social media. And what I would say for me, because I'm an older woman who started teaching before there was email, before there were websites, and certainly before there was AI, this business has been founded on what I am and what I know and how I like to do things. And so though people have said time and time again, oh, and I do have a social media presence, but I'm not an influencer. So I think that, what was your question, Zane? I was going to get back around to the circle. The question was,
we kind of went around in a circle, and I'd almost have to go back and listen because I was listening to where you were going.
So you were asking about if we turn people away and if we fully booked.
Right. Yeah.
So though we have had an enormous, and I mean really enormous amount of press over the years, Travel and Leisure twice, we were featured in Condé Nast Traveler just last year, USA Today Voter Choices the last 2 years, we are still not turning people away. I would say the busiest time for us, in all honesty, was from 2008 when the economy tanked to 2011. And the reason for that, I think, that we were super busy, a lot of guests, was because there was not the popularity of yoga retreats. And now since COVID, it's not just yoga retreats, it's wellness retreats. And so though we have a nice flow of guests, sometimes a guest will be there. We had a woman come last September, and she came and she was the only guest. And she said, this is really weird. And then by the end of the week, she wrote this in a review. She said, at first I felt it seemed weird, but the 3 yoga teachers that were there, they didn't mind. And they were all just amazing teachers. And by the end of the week, I'd done everything I wanted. And she had, we'd gone to the new national monument and we'd swum in a river and we'd gone kayaking and swum in the lake. And, we'd done all these amazing things on top of her learning more about yoga. And I think that's another thing is a lot of people are intimidated about yoga. So no, we are not full up. We are now doing more workshops than we used to when we started. They tend to attract people. However, I still like the premise that people come in on days that work for them, because a lot of the retreat, and that's helped us over the years, like if your vacation is from such to such and you want to go to Costa Rica, but that retreat's only that week, or you want to go to Mexico, but it's only that week, that's very limiting. So we are open straight through. And I think with our workshops, sometimes people get confused. They can come anytime, even when we're having a workshop, if the workshop's not fully booked. So we're opening May 22nd. Today's May 1st. And we have some bookings, but we are certainly not sold out at all. July, we don't have very many at all. So
I would think that Maine, way out in the forest next to the lakes and everything, I saw some pictures. So are you actually on a lake, or I saw somebody on a dock being filmed talking about?
We're about a mile and a half from the lake. But what I do want to say is, oftentimes for us, and I do not know why, ask the universe, who's been our PR person, and we've had all this great PR. I would love that we were booked in advance and turning people away. Of course, I would love that. We do fine. We do fine. But often people don't book until we've opened. And so that is also a little bit interesting. I have to line up all the staff. I have to line up all the workshops. And it's kind of like that expression somewhere where they say, just get ready and they will come, whatever that expression is.
Well, that was that movie about, Kevin Costner.
And it kind of is. Yeah. What movie was that? That says
that was Field of Dreams.
Oh, Field of Dreams. Yes. So anyway, so that's kind of what it is. Oftentimes people would actually contact us over the years and say, does the pricing include the yoga and the meals? Because a lot of these places are charging a lot of money and they have a much higher volume than us. And possibly, though I'm not sure, and I kind of would assume, less experienced qualified teachers than we. We have really great teachers besides me who's been teaching full time for 40 years. People who really live this lifestyle of wellness, which incorporates, avoiding drugs and alcohol and meat and things like that. It's a lifestyle. Now, if people come to us and they're meat eaters, that's not a big deal. But oftentimes they'll say, oh, now I'm going to go home and maybe eat a little less meat. We're not there to proselytize by any way, shape, or form.
That's nice. That's good.
No,
sometimes some people will get let's see, I'm thinking of the term, they get on their high horse about, that you are, it's this way or it's my way or the highway. No, and so that's really nice to hear.
Not. I think what we do, Zane, is we give them an experience and we hold the space for that experience. And then through that experience, they might, like, some of them are like, I can't wait to get home and have my glass of wine. But boy, it's been nice to go for a week and know that I don't have to have my glass of wine. And so I think that we're just giving them an experience to reflect. And, one man who took our teacher training was some very wealthy man from Texas. You're asking about case studies. And he came and he said, I just don't want to drink 2 bottles of wine every night I go out to dinner. He literally was coming there to just kind of cut back on the things he knew he was doing too much of. And it wasn't like he was going to become a yogi and go meditate in a cave and stop eating meat and stop drinking, booze, but he knew that he needed more moderation in his life.
So let's talk about your courses that they have. Oh, so is this your primary business? Do you have another business that you run while you're living there in New York City?
That's a very good question. I've never chosen to have really a business in New York City, though I think being a full-time yoga instructor in New York City is a business. I think that some of my friends that are yoga instructors full-time run it better as a business, I should say, than others. But those of us who are doing it full-time, again, a lot of people in New York City that teach, it's a side gig for them. And that's fine. They love yoga. They teach 1 or 2 classes a week. They get a membership at their gym or whatever. But for most of us that are, here, it's almost like we do have our own business. And that is because for many years up until COVID, I was freelancing with like 3 or 4 different companies. That's a lot of admin.
Yeah. Right.
Keeping that straight. Since COVID, I've only worked with one company. As I said, I'm older, so I'm cutting back. I would say I'm semi-retired, but I'm still plenty as busy as I want to be in New York City, which is great. So less income, true, but definitely doing okay, and not kind of feeling like I'm a freelance semi-retired person, but I'm fully in the game because I love teaching yoga. And a lot of yoga teachers never stop teaching yoga, especially the well-known guru master kind of people. They're teaching until they take their last breath.
So it sounds like those Sewell House, when you're there, that's probably a full-time job plus.
That is my main focus. I'll be honest with you. When I purchased it in 1997, very remote location, yoga retreats were not a thing. It was very unlikely. And so I really just had to devote all my time and energy. And also in the beginning, for me on a personal level, I had a very full-time teaching practice here in New York City. And I was afraid because I worked for different companies. Now I work a little bit more for myself since COVID, online clients and things, but then I didn't. And so I was like, how do I juggle spending half the year up there and half the year here? So I had to do that gradually. The first few years at Sewell House, I was open 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. But I remember finding a journal saying that I wrote, by such and such a year, I'm going to be up at Sewell House, such and such a month. And I manifested that. And I think that, again, all that social media effort, believe me, if someone came along to me and said, hey, Sewell House, I'd love to produce reels for you, because our social media is very simple, like we are. I put up a photo, make a comment, some people have been there, like it. And it has done some good things for our business. It reminds people about us that have been there before. We might find someone new. We did find a really good cook one year through Facebook. A woman who'd been at the retreat told her sister about us, and she came and cooked with us. And so, but all in all, it has been my main focus. And I think up until COVID's a funny thing, isn't it? Like how it shifted people's lives.
It changed the world for sure.
Changed the world. And for some of us, it slowed us down and made us reflect on what's really important to us. And so I do want to live up in Maine full time, which is interesting. It feels maybe a little bit ass backwards, but I'm migrating up there, probably not for another 4 to 5 years. But at that time, I will see where Sewell House is, because we have gone through a lot of changes. And I think, we haven't addressed this, but I imagine you do, and what you do with entrepreneurs. Technology is changing so quickly. So this morning, I just happened to look. I don't always do it. I was up early and I went, searched like USA yoga retreats, where we used to be top 10 in the world between 2008 and 2011. I know we're no longer there. There's a lot of commission sites with thousands of them, but there was a new thing there. So I wrote my web person. I'm like, oh, now there's categories. I've never seen that before. That must be an AI thing. So now you go and they can say like USA, retreats or Maine yoga retreats were very prominent, but it will say like, beginner yoga retreats, or yoga retreats that teach meditation, or yoga retreats that teach cooking, or whatever. And that didn't exist before. That's got to be an AI thing, Zane, that is new. My web guy didn't even know about it.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that either. But
so you asked me in the about the challenges, I think, and I don't know if that was a fluke or not, because he said, I don't know anything about that. But I think one of the challenges being a small business entrepreneur is keeping abreast of the changes and having enough of a team around you to help you with that, because it's not my forte. As I said, there's things I think we could do better, like our social media, but we have a really fantastic web person who just came on board a few years ago, and he's so on top of analytics and like giving me ideas, and we agree to disagree, and he's really on our side, and that's really good.
So tell me about the lessons that you give at Sewell House. And so do you have people who are yoga instructors that come to brush up, or do you have people who are just like, how does this whole yoga thing work? I mean, where do people fall? And do you have different groups that come in there at the same time that want to get to different places with their yoga journey?
Very good question. So just this morning, my web guy, when I told him I saw the yoga for beginners, he said, "Oh, that would be a good one for Sewell House," because even though we're experienced practitioners and I teach a variety, at least 6 different types of yoga. So if someone comes in and is used to vigorous yoga, I can address it. If someone comes in and they need therapeutic healing, they've got a knee issue or something, Ajit and I, she's also a friend of mine I've known at least 30 years, we can address that. And we have other people that have like backgrounds in counseling, MSWs and stuff like that. And so the people that come to Sewell House are general public. We don't get too many teachers. That's a very good question, because yoga teachers do need to brush up from time to time. We do teacher trainings, and those go very well and are very transformational because they're small. The people get very personalized attention. They get to teach 3 times, which is unheard of in yoga teacher trainings. But the general person who comes to our experience, I would say the most important factor is they're going through something. And I think we're living in a time where everybody's going through something. But when I started it in 1997, I started to notice a trend. Someone was going through a major health issue, or they were going through a divorce, or they were going through a very big professional choice or shift. And for some reason, now I don't know if this exists at other retreats, but they would somehow find us and be drawn to us. And you'd asked me about case studies, and I have one that came to my mind before we talked. There was one young man who came to our retreat every year, I think for 12 years.
Wow.
And I just kept watching him change his life, improve his life, no joke. And when he got married, he asked me to officiate, even though I'm not. They went to the Justice of the Peace, and I officiated down on the Jersey Shore. I came down from the Sewell House in August. These are the kind of relationships we create. And then he's gone on and gotten married, and he's adopted a few children, and really shifted. He was in an unhealthy relationship and a career he didn't like. He shifted careers. He'd been in a car accident, didn't know if he could do yoga. He's now a very respected yoga teacher and healer and massage therapist in his own right. Got a big following. And he attributes that to all those annual years coming to Sewell House. And so he just found us on the internet. And that's how about 50% of the people that come to us at least find us on the internet, probably more.
Right. And so when you say somebody has some sort of trouble or issue, I think you said you use the word issue. So when you're your ideal customer or client, how do you market to them? Is it mostly just organic marketing? I mean, they find you on the internet or through word of mouth, or do you do any actual advertising?
That's a very good question over the years, Zane, because I've been doing this a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I have experimented with advertising. Yoga Journal used to have, when they were paper, a listing, and it looked really like it was just their listings, but you were paying for it. That was pretty good. But that they don't have anymore. A lot of other quote unquote paid advertising has not done us much of any good. So it's a very good question. And that's the ongoing question is, how do we draw people to Sewell House in this ongoing overwhelming when they go to the internet now? And that's what people have said. I'll say, how did you find us? And they'll go, I have no idea. I clicked from this to that to this. Now it used to be, oh, I went to yoga retreats or yoga vacations, and you were on the first page. Like I said, from 2008 to 2011, that's a long time ago, but we have a track record. So I think when people do find us, they then get to see the press, the testimonials. There are a lot of testimonials, and probably other places that have existed a long time have press and testimonials. But ours are ours, and we are unique. And again, I think we're very small and very personalized. And our staff all have their own personalities. It's just a very unique place. And also what I haven't mentioned, which is really why I bought it, is because our president, who created the national park system, was healed of asthma in this house. He was a very privileged young man from Harvard. My great-grandfather had been trained by the Native Americans from the age of 3, but not been schooled. And was told by his tutor, because Theodore Roosevelt wanted to be a naturalist, you've got to go meet this man. Not only did he meet him, but they became lifelong friends. And that's what my one woman show is about. And it's powerful that, in this North Woods, which is still the cleanest air in the country. It just came out in New York Times last week, and I put it in a newsletter. There's only 2 cities in the whole country that don't have bad air. Bangor is one, or our guests fly into, and the other one's in Puerto Rico. We still have that same, well, it's not the same because we don't have the big trees like he had, but it's still the most wooded area of the country. It still has amazing healing air. And we can take people, on some of the same, the lake is the lake he went on. To me, that is why I'm doing this, is a very heartfelt connection to the legacy of my roots and the proof that healing happens here and that friendship is possible in ways we never imagined. And not just that, they stayed in touch for their entire life. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt was writing letters to my great-grandfather when he was president, and he came up to Portland, Maine in 1918, and my great-grandfather was invited down to meet him, and a year later he passed. No one expected him to pass. He was going to run for president again. I mean, their bond was deep,
Yeah.
So I think that this will maybe woo-woo, but I think there's an energy at Sewell House that you're not going to get. There's one other older house that someone is doing in Maine right now, and I'm not going to say any names or anything, but I don't want to badmouth them or anything. But we had a guest that came last year, and she said, "Oh yeah, they, their place is renovated beautifully, and they're like lawyers who opened up a yoga retreat." She said, "But you guys are more authentic," and I think that if people can realize and are looking for that, that's what we have to offer. We're
So
not
tell me
hopping
about
on a trend.
what no, I just want to I just things that come to my mind, so they're not going to be out of order because I just get curious about things that I'm thinking about as we're talking. Tell me about the food, because everybody wants to know what's the food like, because if I'm going to be there for 3 or 4, is it always a week, or do they sign up for a certain period of time?
The food, first and foremost, the food is incredibly important. Everything's important. I think that, that I always say to my staff, the guests come first. So we try to pay attention to every detail. And, as I said earlier, kind of support them and hold the space for whatever they need. And, we don't know them when they come to see us. So we do the best we can. The food is, I said, vegetarian. And very good tasting vegetarian, because we have people that come, they're like, whoa, I didn't know that vegetarian could be so good. And we don't have the same cook every summer, but we do have some of the same cooks return every summer. So that, like, we have one woman, she's amazing, who cooks Middle Eastern food. Her brother is a very famous chef in Israel who actually cooked for President Biden when he was over there. And so he's a caterer. I think it's in her blood because she comes for about 6 weeks. And when she comes, we know that we're going to have like something you get at a fine restaurant in New York City, Nouvelle Cuisine, Middle Eastern,
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of the year, we have other people that come in and chef, and we just have different guest chefs, or we have staff that chef, because we have 3 different Sewell House cookbooks, which are readily available on our website. And I think it's on a blog post. We used to have it right on the website, but people can just download that. We want to share the wealth of all this delicious food that people have had over the years. 3 different chefs created cookbooks who've been to us.
So they can just download them for free?
Yep. At this point in
Wow.
time, that's what we do. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they always say give away something for free. And really it's just because after a time, we just were like, let's share this, let's share this. Because oftentimes people would ask, and we would sell paper copies for a long time. And those, interestingly enough, Zane, those are the ones they want at the retreat. They want to take home a paper copy. Interestingly enough, when we switched it over to digital, they weren't buying it as much. Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
So these are all the kind of things we learn from trial and error as we go along. So at that point, we're like, well, they're not buying them digitally. We're not going to produce them paper-wise anymore. We just stopped doing it. Let's just share them,
Yep. So when can you like book ahead, like if you want a particular type of food, or do you publish it ahead of time? What kind of style of food? Because it sounded interesting.
There's no menu for them to see, but there are, we definitely get people with special needs, and we're very small. So one of the biggest ones these days that is popular is gluten-free.
Mm-hmm.
Gluten-free is very popular. We are vegetarian, not vegan. So the other thing they require they can require is vegan, because we do get people come to us specifically because they want a vegan place, and that's not always easy to find. So
Yes.
vegan means no cheese, no egg, no dairy, whereas vegetarian, we do serve that. What we don't serve is flesh. We don't serve chicken or fish or beef or, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So that kind of special diet thing we can do. But otherwise, when they come, the menu is an unknown to them, other than they're going to get vegetarian food. Years ago, when we would be open for like New Year's, we would create a special menu and, present it to the guests and like that. But no, we really don't do that anymore. And people don't seem to have a problem with that. Whatever we serve, we serve. They don't have a choice of 2 or 3 things, because we're so very small. The chef prepares whatever's going to be the entree for that meal.
And do you use local type produce that you're getting right there in Maine?
Yes, that's a very good question. When it is in season, we definitely outsource, and we are very locally, and we are very fortunate because we have 2 different Amish communities. And of course, there's other people that have farm stands, but the Amish communities, oh my gosh, they have amazing produce, like amazing. And so, people have often said to us over the years, why don't you have your own garden? Well, I'll be honest with you, it's hard enough for us to keep the weeds out of our flower garden, let alone have a vegetable garden when you're running a yoga retreat. So we do things like compost and such, but we don't have time to maintain a veggie garden. And yet there's plenty of that locally to outsource. The other thing that we do in terms of bulk things like gluten-free oats and nuts and that kind of thing is we get them from United Natural Foods, which is the company that provides to Whole Foods, for example. So that is a whole other side of this small business. We've got 3 refrigerators and 1 freezer in our garage. I mean, we have all this food for just these small retreats, but you have to have all your inventory in place and make sure that you said it's organic, it's fresh, it's going to be good.
So tell me about the yoga itself. So tell me about, I'm not a yoga person, and you're kind of an unusual guest on, because I'm usually talking to practitioners of various types of really everything from regular medical doctors who have some sort of unusual specialty to chiropractors to integrated medicine to neurosurgeons so this is kind of you're an unusual guest, but I thought the yoga angle really might be interesting to our audience, and you're, like I said, I went online, I looked at your place, and it looked fun. The whole thing looked fun to me. So tell me a little bit more about, educate me about yoga.
Right. Well, so yoga by definition simply is called they say it's the union of the mind, the body, and the breath. So if we get into yoga, I don't want to get into it too philosophically, though if you took our teacher training, you sure would. But it really is a lifelong study and a lifelong practice. And a lot of people in our culture think of it as just physical. But I say it's that union of mind first, body, and breath. And then what they say in yoga is the breath, which some of your physicians may have talked about the breath. The breath, I know books have been written by physicians on that and such. The breath controls the mind controls the body. So when I first started yoga myself, I was in college at the time, 18 years old. I was anorexic, I had an eating disorder. And so that's a very long time ago. And then they sent me to a therapist and he put me in child's pose. And so the reason I'm telling you that is my first few introductions to yoga were not what yoga is today. It was to heal, to become more aware of what's going on. Because honestly, I just had no emotional intelligence. I wasn't taught in that. So all my emotions were my rage and my sadness and everything I didn't know how to process caused me to become ill. And so, so that was my first exposure to yoga. So I went and took a class in it and I was like, okay, this is hatha yoga, which is very relaxing and it will help my stress. Stress wasn't a catchword back then. It'll help my healing. I'm going to use that. So I did hatha yoga for some years. And so when people come to Sewell House, a lot of times they don't realize that yoga is more than exercise. They just don't realize that. And if they're there for the exercise, that's fine. But what's wonderful, another case study, I had one woman very early on and when I'd opened the retreat, she had 1 more year to retire from working as a school teacher. And they got a new principal that was very bad. And she was having problems because of this principle. And she got pneumonia and she ended up in the hospital. And she came to the Sewell House and she was very excited that she was at a place that someone had healed of asthma, because that's breathing. And by the time she left us, she had a little short yoga program to help her with all the things that had happened in her lungs. Because lungs in yoga, this is Eastern medicine now, not Western, lungs are grief. So she was having a really hard time with that last year, and then she was going to retire. And for whatever reason, she got very ill in her lungs, So we taught her some breathing, some simple poses like baby pose, the one
So
I
give
was
me an
first taught,
example
very healing.
of some breathing exercises that. So if I were to go to the Sewell House, or if you were just instructing me, Zane, if you did this breathing exercise daily, you would have this result. Give me an example like that I could actually. So if I walk away from here, I can say, "Oh, yeah, I can do that." So I will give you an example.
Well,
I'll give you an example from.
yeah.
I was talking with a. This was a chiropractor who gave me a little exercise, which was really terrific. He talked about balance, and as you get older, people start to lose their balance. I know this is sort of off topic, but something that a takeaway for me. So he was talked about. So here's a little exercise you can do, and I passed this on many times since. He says, "You use electric toothbrush?" I said, "Yeah, sure, I do." And he says, "Okay, do this." He says, "Every time you brush your teeth." For so it's 2 minutes, for half the time, for 1 minute, stand on one foot and balance yourself. And then you get the other half and stand on the other foot. He says, and every day you'll have this balancing exercise without ever thinking about it. And actually, it's I've been doing that, and it's I feel like incremental little teeny changes that are happening.
Well, no, that's not off topic at all, because yoga is very much about balance also, right? That's a big one for older. I mean, I've done a little bit on my YouTube about like yoga for baby boomers, and I'm aging, so I can see these changes in my body. We'll get back to the breath, but I just want to say quickly, what you're doing is so funny. We had a man up at Sewell House, he has since retired, who did our boiler, right? And he was like a little monkey, very agile. And I asked him, "What do you do?" And he said, "Well, my niece is a yoga instructor." And that's exactly what he did. Every day, he would just, while he was brushing his teeth, he would do tree pose where the foot is inside the other leg. That man could balance so well. And it's exactly what the chiropractor gave you. So that is also what we would do in yoga, and there is a thing in yoga where it's universal across all the different yogas I've studied. If you can breathe in for 8 counts, and that would be 8 seconds, but I'm going to tell you how to breathe in. And if you can breathe out for 8 seconds, they say your mind becomes meditative. And I don't want to get into a big discussion on that, but because a lot of people think, "Oh, I can't meditate." If the breath controls the mind and you're slowing your breath down, the average person breathes 10 to 15 times a minute. If you slow it down to 8 seconds in and 8 seconds out, you're breathing 4 times a minute. 4 times a minute. So this is going to calm down our nervous system, calm down our thoughts. However, if you ask someone to take a deep breath, I'm going to demo it. Most of them are going to go like this, right? So instead of asking you, I'm just going to demo.
Mm-hmm.
That is not right. That is right back up in your anxiety breath, right? So if you sped up the normal person breathing, they'd be like, right? It's not what you want. You want to breathe down into your rib cage. And maybe some of your people have told you that, your doctors, because that's the way we breathed when we were born. It's called baby breathing. It's called belly breathing. It's called diaphragmatic breathing. And so
funny you use that,
the easiest thing.
I was just going to say, when you're singing, that's a mistake that most amateur singers make as well. They're singing from up here when really they should be singing from down here. That's a total. Just
and I've
my
heard
brain.
that opera singers, deep sea divers, and yogis are the 3 people that have the most control over their breath. So, right, singers, opera singers, because have to really and deep sea divers and yogis. Now, even though I've been doing yoga all these years, I am so not as advanced as those ones that you hear about that can stop their heart by controlling their breath. But what we'll call ourselves householders, what we householders can do is a simple exercise like that. And then again, I think if you're not used to it, you could place your hands on the rib cage. And of course, closing your eyes is really useful because you have more internal awareness. And then if 8 feels too forced, you start out with 4 in. And then as you 4 out, you feel the rib cage moving in. So what you want to feel on the inhale is this expansion, like a balloon. They often say the balloon in your rib cage, belly and low back, not up here. Even though you are expanding your lungs, if you just breathe here, you're not getting to the bottom of the lung. You're not, that all that stuff. So that would be a simple one, I'd say. Sometimes when I'm at the retreat and we meditate for half an hour in the morning, that is what I am doing. I am counting my breath. Now there are variations on that. If you're really anxious, you can make your exhale longer than your inhale. There's many things you can do with the breath. It's an incredibly powerful tool, which again, you were asking about yoga. The mainstream yogi comes in and wants to get their exercise. And if they add the breath, wow. I mean, really powerful. But a lot of the, kids I teach in New York, all I can do is take the horse to water. I really guide the breath. I'll say, inhale up, exhale down, just to get them aware of their breath. And actually in what's called Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which is kind of the encyclopedia of yoga, it's like 2000 years old or something. They say the reason we're doing the poses is so we can learn how to have a non-restless breath, to get back to that breath. So I hope that will help you if you can just work on that.
So that was kind of the poses are like a distraction to get you to stop thinking about the action.
Yeah, they kind of are. And then physically, when you get sweating, that purifies the body. And of course, we want purity, which again, not to get, proselytized, but I drink coffee, but some of my friends that do yoga don't do any gluten. They don't any coffee. You have to decide what you want to take in your body, because in yoga, you are trying to kind of stay as clean inside as you can, which I think anyone who's into health probably is.
So if I were to think, okay, I want to find out more about the Sewell House. How do I do that? So here's your plug. Give us your plug.
Here's my plug.
How they would.
Well, you're talking about how long do people stay. So we do recommend people come for at least 5 days. 3 days is a minimum. And the main reason, 2 reasons. You got to travel to get there. We're far from a lot of places, though flying to Bangor from some places is pretty easy, especially New York City. And 2, it takes a few days for the world to drop off of you. We're all coming from whatever our life has going on. And in one form of yoga called yin, they say your issues are in your tissues. So you have to get somewhere where you can just let your tissues relax for a few days and get the benefit of being exposed to yoga twice a day. And if it's too much for you, just come once a day. Everything's optional. Of getting a massage, of getting a healing treatment, a Reiki treatment, of taking a sauna. We have sauna. That's supposed to be very, very healthy for you. And we have a little one-person jacuzzi, and we have rivers you can lay in and lakes you can swim in, all those get back to nature things. So, you contact us through our website. I think that's the best way, right? Is sewellhouse.com.
Okay, we'll put that into the show notes too. So I think
yes.
that.
And also,
so I'm going to take away the one thing I'm going to take away is I'm going to do the breath, the 8 seconds, because that kind of resonates with me.
Yes.
I'm going to put that into my routine. Eventually, I'm going to be such a healthful person. It's just going to be incredible.
Well, and the other thing I would say is when you're brushing your teeth. Okay, this is adding a lot, and you have your leg up. Just think about the nostril breath. Just think, even with your brushing your teeth, if you can think about the nostril breath while you're in that, standing on one leg, now you're really doing your yoga pose, You'll have the toothpaste running down your mouth, but you can breathe through your nose.
Okay, I think we're going to wind it up right here. I'm going to press the stop, but hang with me for a second after I do that.
I will.
Forgot to ask her about our book, because originally I had talked to her about, we help authors publish their book, and she says, no, I'm not interested in that. I already just wrote a book. And so that was how we started off. And then I said, that's fine. Can you come on the podcast? Because I thought what you were doing was interesting. So tell us, I started the podcast back up in the middle again, so we ended it, but actually I wanted to ask you about your book.
Yeah, and thank you, Zane. That I'm not your regular guest on a lot of levels, it sounds like. So I'm glad there was curiosity about that. My book is something that I published in 2019. And it is a memoir. There are a lot of yoga memoirs out there, but it is a yoga memoir because we all have our own journey about how yoga helped me. I alluded a little bit to where my first exposure was when I had an emotional illness in my late teens. And then continuing on to just kind of sort of, and matter of fact, it's got a strange title, but it is about unraveling the things in our life, the knots that I think yoga can do both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so it also very much interweaves with the story of why I bought Sewell House, the family history, the legacy of healing in the house. And so the title is kind of strange. A friend told me the other day I have a much better title, but the current title is Balancing with Bunions, because I have these humongous bunions on my feet that I've had for many years, since my 20s. And you were talking about balancing, and yoga is about balancing. It's about balancing our nervous system, our physical body being balanced when we walk. So I thought there was this amazing metaphor in that title, but I'm not sure it was the best title. Nevertheless, it has been published, and someone just told me yesterday, because I don't have anyone really marketing it, it's up on Amazon, but someone told me they just read it yesterday and they felt it was very vulnerable and they enjoyed it. And then I had some writing tricks. They weren't aware if I was doing them. I wasn't. So if I did some things that worked, I'm glad. So yeah, I did do a book, and I'm almost got another one almost published that is case studies. You asked about case studies, and from a perspective of the energy centers along your spine. That one's pretty much in the can. So yeah.
And that one is going to be published on Amazon, I imagine, again, because that's where people go to get books. And that one, in the case studies, does that explain what the people did to end up with the results that they had?
That's exactly what it is. And I interviewed people from over the years, and they told me exactly what methods they used. And it's actually one specific type of yoga, but I talk about other forms of yoga as well. And it was kind of exciting to do that, and that they could share what they use. And by the way, it wasn't all physical. Some of them used certain meditations, because we didn't get to that too much. But yoga, the breath is a form of meditation. Yoga has other types of meditation. And so it's a book about yoga and meditation that help people. One of my students had lung cancer. One of my students had throat cancer. Just one student just totally changed her life and found the man of her life, and things like that really big life changes that people use the yoga for.
So if someone were to read this book, they could there would be things that they could do or take away from it that
Yeah.
think, well, maybe I could do that.
Yes, absolutely. That is it. And at the end of each chapter, I used it in a workshop last year at Sewell House, which I'm offering again this year. It's on the chakras, the energy centers. And at the end of the workshop, one of my colleagues said the thing she thought was the most efficient thing of the whole book. A lot of books have this, but she said it was really good, is I have self-reflection questions at the end of each chapter for that part of the body. Because in yoga, the idea is that each part of the body has various issues that we can work on physically and mentally through vibration and through poses and through stretching and through breathing. So it's a very interesting healing modality, really.
Yeah, that's a very good writing technique that I think some nonfiction writers miss, and that's to summarize what the chapter was all about at the end. So kudos for that.
Thank you. Again, I'm not a trained writer, but I love writing, and I've been writing a lot since I was a child. My book has a poem I wrote when I was 12 years old in it called Why, that asks all the questions of life. And I was like, how did I not ask that when I was 12? Children are quite amazing, aren't they?
They are. Now it's my grandchildren. So, okay. Well, thank you very much. Exactly. Thanks for staying on for a second. So hang with me again for a second, because I had just had
I will. Thank you, Zane. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
Well, that about winds it up for today. Thanks for tuning in to The Holistic Entrepreneur. I'm Zane Myers. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our podcast or watch on YouTube. Join us next time as we continue to explore both the art of healing and the science of business in healthcare. We'll see you next time.